Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of ATG, the Syndicate Forum today. I am Jeff Black, joined with my co-host, Jason Theobald, a.k.a. Scooby. We are without our friend, our colleague, Robo, today. He is having to wine and dine business guest as he is flirting with the 8- and 9-figure companies in his life to rule and take over the world. So we wish him well. But we have our buddy, the one, the only Vince Pitstick, V-Daddy, as I call him, to all those who know him. He is here from Tampa, Florida. He's the owner of Nutrition Dynamic, co-owner
now
Vital Network.
Vital Coaching.
Network, that's right. Vital Network, and then co-formulator, co-owner of New Ethics Formulations, same as Jason Theobald. All these great things. We brought you in here today because the three of us are going to jam on the topic of Semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy, all the taboo, dirty names. So we're probably going to have a different approach to it, I would dare say, than most of the podcasts. You often see it being shamed, a lot of sound bites, 60-second, 90-second clips that are trying to inform you something that actually does have a place in medicine. These two guys, what they do with their clinics, with their clients, they're on another level. And we wanted to kind of showcase that today and bring a different light to semaglutide because I have some use with it in regards to the gym pop people. And I've seen some great placement with like morbidly obese people who are constantly hungry, who need that, switch off. We're talking like 150, 200 pounds overweight, which is where a lot of the country is starting to trend and go towards. So we're going to have a great dynamic conversation. But with that being said, Vince, can we introduce the topic of what is semaglutide exactly? Like what kind of drug is it? What's the mechanism of action? How long has it been around? You want to give a little breakdown there?
Yeah, so I think it's important that like a lot of clinics that I used to have relationships with as an advisor started using it. This has been around for about 20 years, actually. Right. The research has been going on for even a little bit longer than that. It's really been in heavy practice probably about, probably 15 years, right? About 15 years. And where I first saw it, and this is why I naturally at first I was resistant, so maybe other people will feel this way too. When you hear the word semaglutide right now, the symbolism behind it, what you're hearing is weight loss fad. And I would really ask people to hold judgment for a minute and not just assume this is another HCG, just is another phentermine, is another like speed pill, something along those lines. Although it can be abused like that, right? I want people to suspend judgment and I want them to listen to this podcast and then come up with their own opinion after, right? That's all I'm asking people to do is go on the ride with us because we all have, it's a topic that's hot. So when you use a word, it has a symbol. A symbol has a meaning. And so people will shut off immediately depending on where you fall on those lines. And I was victim of that 10 years ago. So I'm at this one medical clinic. They're working with type 2 diabetics. And we start seeing a rash of metformin resistant type 2 diabetics, okay? This is important to give context, where their sugars are staying stable. They're using metformin one day, next day, everything is great. And then boom, sugars go to 250. They can't get it down with metformin. And they don't know what to do. They're asking me about what functional stuff to use, things like that. And then they throw this thing in. At the time, it wasn't semaglutide. There's been a few GLP1s. What's the name that they're using now? That's the patented name. You got there's Ozempic. And then there was one even before that. But lirapeptide or something like that. Okay. Liraglutide, I think. I think
it's more along that line, but I don't know exactly.
It was close to that. And so some of the data that was there. So anyways, that starts plummeting the numbers. Meanwhile, you're seeing a lot of other drugs that stack alongside of metformin, right? That are pills. And I had never seen those work very, very well. There's a multiple stacks that you can add on top of metformin that will talk about losing 15 pounds within the first month or whatever. And those drugs always seem to have really bad effects to the metabolism. So I was always very anti any type 2 diabetes medication that would be stacked on metformin because I knew that if you took it for a couple of years, it would actually be the thing that makes you gain weight. So I was very anti. It seemed like it would be a positive effect and then a negative effect. So I was very anti-semaglutide. Now, we would see some people lose some weight. I thought it was a gimmick at the time, and I was very judgmental of it. So when it really got popular in weight loss and it started coming across my desk and people were asking me about it, this is about 5 years ago, I was talking shit about it. I was that guy talking shit, right? And I realized that I passed judgment way too fast.
I actually remember you talked shit on it, one of the PECs.
I did.
It was
I
early.
did.
One
It
of the
was early.
early ones we did.
2019, somewhere
I
around
did
there.
because remember, I was thinking of it in context of metformin resistance and just stacking it on top. So what I was using was my judgment of my preformed concept of what it was. And because of that, I didn't even look at it. I didn't double check the research. I didn't do anything. I just passed judgment. So I've put my foot in my mouth a few times now in the pursuit of truth. And that was one of the last times where I'm like, man, I'm not going to talk on anything until I've really given it a thorough pass and make sure that I've checked my bias and then seen it work more clinically, right? Semaglutide, in a nutshell, is what they call a GLP1, a glucagon-like peptide, right? One. And it is actually secreted in your gut in the response to you eating food, okay? So it's like when I chew up food and then I swallow it and it goes into my gut, it's actually something that's released with the help of bacteria. And then it is released, and that's what your pancreas kind of responds to as well to release insulin. We can go down the track more and more here, but I think the important thing just to understand in general what it's designed to do in the body is that it's a timing. Digestion's a symphony. When I eat, the band's got to play, the violin's got a violin, the trumpet's got a trumpet, and it's all got to happen in the right order. And when it doesn't matter how it gets off. It's all chaos and garbage. Sounds like shit. So that's why it's very, very important right early on in the series of the symphony that GLP gets released. That's peptide from the gut that then interacts with the beta cells of the pancreas. Then the beta cells of the pancreas then release insulin with the glucose that's inside the blood, right? So it's a very important symphony that all has to happen at the same time for you to have the appropriate amount of insulin to shuttle nutrients both into your fat cells and into your muscle cells. This is very important because people will tell you that insulin is the reason that everybody's gaining weight. And I will tell you that we learned from semaglutide, insulin is the reason that people burn fat. And people will think, well, insulin stores fat into triglycerides, into fat cells, but it's because, here's the symphony. It's because the insulin shuttles nutrients into fat cell that the fat cell then releases the thing we need to burn fat, which is what? Leptin. So leptin gets released from the fat cell because it just entered in nutrients. If no nutrients enter the fat cell, it does not release leptin. So the point is there's a very intricate, and you have to follow the line of like the method of action that is occurring in the physiology that creates the outcome of reduced hunger. Because leptin reduces hunger. Right. And so what they're looking at semaglutide is someone is not hungry and doesn't eat. Well, I've seen that shit before. Right. That's what people are thinking. They're thinking, oh, I've taken fat burners. I've taken, medicines that don't make me hungry. I've gone to the doctor and gotten the phentermine. This is just another bullshit gimmick. Yeah. And while 70% of the world is using it for inappropriate reasons, we're going to be wise. We're not going to pass judgment right away. We're going to go through this journey with these three wise gentlemen here, and we're going to unpack what's good, what isn't, and then where so you can make a great decision about where you fall on the topic of semaglutide.
How does glucagon play in? So for our listeners, I think that's important.
That'd be where you want to go first on the whole thing.
That, and then how does that play in with it? Yeah. And then how can cortisol be a problem for glucagon?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So interestingly, when we talk about the pancreas, let's go to the pancreas. So people forget it's a digestive organ, but it's actually very integral as an endocrine organ. And so it serves this function of not just pancreatic enzymes, but also its release of glucagon and insulin. Two key instruments in the symphony of metabolism. So glucagon, your body has to decide where it's going to get its reserve energy from. So glucagon is the hormone that when it gets released from something called alpha cells. So you have alpha cells on your pancreas, and you have beta cells. Beta cells release the insulin. Alpha cells release the glucagon, right? So your body's going to release one of them. Right? It depends which one and how much of each one that dictates whether you store fat, how high your glucose levels are, and then what your energy levels are like. And people forget this because we only look at data. This is where I was at with it. I thought insulin was bad because I was only looking at research of obese, inactive people. And what you see there is high fasting insulin levels, which would lead you to believe that insulin is bad, when actually insulin is the absolute key to an amazing metabolism, right? But when you only see it not working in the worst cases, then you tend to get a bad picture of what it actually does. So glucagon is what tells when your liver is basically when your liver releases glycogen, right? So for example, if I don't eat food, and so there's a whole lot of evidence that would suggest that it's possible that some of the sugar alcohols, high stress, other components are simulating the release of glucagon with cortisol when no food's being eaten, which is why sometimes in starvation mode, some people's bodies will end up creating high glucose levels without high A1Cs or high insulin.